Let's unpack this. One is not born a woman, but rather becomes one.
Ah, the classic Beauvoir line.
Right. Simone de Beauvoir just drops that. And
Yeah.
it really makes you stop and think, what does it actually mean to become a woman?
Is it like a conscious decision?
Yeah. Is it like choosing an outfit?
Yeah?
Or is it more like, I don't know, society piling on all these shoulds?
Or maybe something deeper, more complex.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into some pretty mind-bending ideas about this, especially around Judith Butler's work.
Who really takes Beauvoir's idea and runs with it, yeah.
Yeah.
But also brings in people like Foucault, Wittig, Irigaray.
It's quite the lineup.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is how they take something that feels so fundamental, being a man or a woman, and show how layered and frankly constructed it might be.
Yeah, it's not just about dictionary definitions, is it? It's about the actual processes, how our whole understanding of gender gets built.
Totally. So we've got some really fascinating stuff to get into. We'll look at how Butler engages with Beauvoir, obviously.
And Foucault's influence on power. Yeah, that's huge here.
Oh, definitely. Then Butler's own big idea, gender performativity. And what happens when you start poking at the very category of woman? Does it hold up?
And the whole sex versus gender thing, is that distinction as neat as we thought?
Right. We'll tackle that. Plus the role of compulsory heterosexuality, which sounds complicated, but we'll break it down.
And then the different takes from Wittig and Irigaray, they don't always agree, do they?
Not at all. It's going to be like a philosophical workout for our assumptions.
And I think big picture, it helps us understand not just what gender is, but how it works, how it gets put together in the world.
Yeah, and what that means for us, how we live.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, our mission today is to pull out the key insights from these, let's be honest, sometimes dense texts.
Give you the highlights, the aha moments.
Exactly. A clearer, maybe more complicated picture of how people are thinking about becoming a woman right now. Not easy answers, but hopefully some new ways of seeing things. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. So Butler on becoming, where does she start? Beauvoir's point was massive back then, wasn't it? Gender as social, not biological destiny.
Oh, absolutely groundbreaking. Beauvoir basically said, look, you're not born with woman stamped on you. It's learned, picked up.
And Butler sees the importance of that, for sure, moving away from pure biology.
Definitely. But then Butler does this, like, philosophical pivot. She asks, okay, but what does become actually imply? Beauvoir's phrasing almost suggests there's a you there before gender. A kind of agent choosing to become a woman.
Right, like a core self deciding. And Butler really questions that idea of a pre-gendered self, doesn't
She totally does. And she pulls in Nietzsche here, which is fascinating.
the critique of substance?
Exactly. Nietzsche basically argued that we imagine a doer behind the deed, but maybe there isn't one. There's no lightning separate from the flash. The flashing is the lightning.
Okay, so how does Butler apply that to gender?
Well, she argues there isn't some hidden womanness inside that then gets expressed. Instead, your gender identity is made up by the very expressions themselves.
So the walking, talking, dressing, all the things we do that read as gendered?
Those repeated actions within social rules are what create the effect of a stable gendered self.
Wow, so it's flipped. It's not, I'm a woman, therefore I act this way. It's, I act this way repeatedly, and that constitutes me as a woman.
Exactly. That's the mind bender. Becoming isn't a conscious choice by some genderless you. It's this constant process of being shaped by and participating in these gendered performances.
So the agent doesn't come first. The category woman and the person embodying it are formed through the performance.
Okay, so if becoming is tied to these social performances, what does that do to the category woman itself? Because feminists like Beauvoir were trying to define it, right? To fight for women's rights.
Yeah, and that's where things get complicated again. The sources point out that initially, feminism often assumed woman was a stable, unified group, a solid foundation for politics.
Makes sense. Sisterhood is powerful, that kind of thing.
But that assumption got challenged, even from within feminism. You mentioned Kristeva's quote.
Oh, yeah. Strictly speaking, women cannot be said to exist. That's pretty provocative for feminism.
It really is. It forces you to ask, well, if there's no stable woman, what are we even talking about?
What does becoming even point to?
Well, the sources emphasize that gender isn't monolithic. It changes across time, cultures. And it always intersects with other things.
Like race, class, sexuality.
Exactly. So the experience of being a woman isn't one single thing. It's incredibly varied depending on all those other factors. The idea of one universal woman starts to look shaky.
Yeah, you can see that immediately. The reality of womanhood in one context is just miles away from another.
And this is where Foucault comes back in. His ideas about how systems of power, like law, medicine, even just everyday talk,
Yeah.
don't just regulate subjects, they actually produce them. They create the categories, including woman.
So the very system that feminism might be fighting against could also be shaping the identity of the woman it's trying to liberate.
That's the unsettling idea, yeah. It's like the power structure helps create the subject that then resists it.
Wow. Okay. So becoming a woman happens inside these power dynamics that are already defining the terms.
Precisely. The category isn't neutral ground. It's actively constructed.
Which leads us straight to sex versus gender, the classic distinction. Beauvoir used it. Sex is biology. Gender is culture on top.
A really important move at the time strategically. To argue gender wasn't biologically fixed.
But the sources we're looking at push further, don't they, following Butler and Foucault?
They do. They start asking, how stable is sex itself? Is it really just pure objective biology, chromosomes, hormones, done?
Or is our understanding of biology also shaped by culture, by scientific interests, social norms?
Exactly. Think about how medical definitions related to sex have shifted. The way intersex variations have been understood or pathologized. Is sex just found in nature, or is it also, in a way, decided upon?
So, maybe even biological sex isn't this solid bedrock beneath gender.
That's the radical suggestion here, that the concept of sex itself might be just as constructed as gender. Maybe sex was always already gender.
Whoa. Okay,
Yeah.
unpack that. Sex was always gender.
The idea is that we can never access a purely biological body before it's interpreted through a cultural, gendered lens, so the distinction collapses.
So if that's true, then becoming a woman isn't culture writing on a blank biological slate. The slate wasn't blank to begin with.
Kinda, it suggests the whole system of sex and gender is deeply intertwined culturally from the get-go.
This is really twisting my brain. Okay, so if gender isn't stable, and maybe sex isn't either, how does this performativity thing actually work? What are the mechanics?
Right. Butler's performativity isn't like acting in a play, consciously putting on a role. It's more subtle.
Yeah.
It's the repeated stylization of the body, often unconscious. Think about all the tiny ways we signal gender posture, gestures, tone of voice.
That's stuff we just do without thinking.
Exactly. But we do it within these really strong, often unspoken social rules and expectations. Regulatory framework.
And you mentioned these are often tied to.
Compulsory heterosexuality. That underlying assumption and pressure that heterosexuality is the default, the norm.
Right. Society is kind of set up assuming men desire women, women desire men.
And that pressure reinforces a strict binary gender system, doesn't it? You need clear men and clear women for that system to work smoothly.
So the need for heterosexuality bolsters the need for only two distinct genders.
That's the argument. And Butler says it's through repeatedly acting out these gender norms, often to fit into that expected heterosexual framework, that we create the illusion of having a stable internal gender identity.
So becoming a woman isn't free-form improv. It's highly directed by these norms.
Very much so. It's constrained. It goes back to that Nietzschean idea again.
The doer behind the deed.
Yeah. The feeling of having a solid gender core isn't an inherent essence. It's an effect of all these repeated regulated actions. Gender is a doing, constrained by norms, not a pre-existing being.
Okay, let's dig into that compulsory heterosexuality part more.
Yeah.
How exactly does it police gender?
Well, as the sources explain it, it basically demands coherence. If you're assigned female at birth, the system expects you to identify as a woman, act feminine, and desire men. Everything needs to line up neatly.
Ah, so that's what makes a gender intelligible or understandable to society, when it fits that pattern.
Largely, yes. When sex, gender identity, gender expression, and desire all seem to conform to that heterosexual matrix, the gender is usually seen as normal, unquestioned.
But if something doesn't line up, like if someone assigned female, identifies as masculine, and loves women,
Then their gender might be seen as confusing, incoherent, or even threatening to that established order. Their intelligibility is questioned within that dominant framework.
so the argument is that challenging the assumption of heterosexuality is key to disrupting rigid gender categories.
That's a major point. If heterosexuality wasn't the assumed default, maybe the pressure for everyone to fit neatly into man or woman boxes would lessen.
It could open up space?
Exactly. The sources even float that really radical idea we touched on, that our very understanding of biological sex, the binary itself, might be partly shaped by the needs of a compulsory heterosexual system.
Wow. Needing two distinct sexes to make heterosexuality seem natural and inevitable.
That's the line of thought. It's definitely pushing the boundaries of how we think about biology and culture.
Okay, now the sources also bring in Wittig and Irigaray. How do they fit? They have different takes, right?
Very different and sometimes clashing critiques. Wittig is, well, quite radical. She argues sex itself is primarily a political category.
Political, how so?
She says it's created by heterosexual society to maintain its power. And within that system, sex always effectively means feminine, while masculine is the default, the universal, the unmarked norm.
So for Wittig, being categorized as woman is inherently tied to being oppressed within that heterosexual structure.
Precisely. And her solution is pretty drastic. Destroy the category of sex altogether. Abolish it.
Just get rid of man and woman as categories.
Essentially, yes. She argues that individuals, especially lesbians who she sees as outside the direct heterosexual contract, can then escape these limits and become universal subjects. Language is key for her, too. Transforming it is crucial.
Okay, dismantle the categories. That's Wittig. What about Irigaray?
Irigaray comes at it differently. She focuses more on language and psychoanalysis, arguing that women are positioned paradoxically within what she calls phallogocentric discourse.
Phallogocentric, meaning male-centered language and thought.
Basically, yeah. A system where the masculine perspective is the default and female experience is either ignored, misrepresented, or only understood in relation to the masculine.
Okay.
She famously describes woman as the sex which is not one, meaning women's specificity and potential multiplicity are erased or can't even be properly articulated within this male-dominated symbolic order. They are linguistically sort of absent or defined negatively.
So where Wittig sees woman as a political cage to be broken, Irigaray sees woman as already silenced and distorted by the dominant way of thinking and speaking.
That's a good way to put it. Irigaray argues that in this system, both the defining subject and the defined other, often woman, are conceived through a masculine lens. The very way gender gets marked in language is, for her, a masculinist suppression of the feminine.
So her strategy isn't destruction, like Wittig, but maybe finding a new language, different way to speak the feminine.
More like exposing the limitations of the current system and exploring possibilities for articulating difference differently. Yeah. So really different diagnoses and proposed paths forward.
It seems like both are saying the current system is bad, but they disagree profoundly on why and what to do.
Exactly. Which brings us back to Butler and this idea of performativity opening up possibilities for, well, messing with the system, subversion.
Right. If gender is made through doing, can we do it differently? On purpose?
The sources definitely suggest yes. If gender is produced through repetition, then changing the repetition even slightly can have an effect. Subversive repetition.
Like doing gender in ways that are maybe exaggerated or contradictory. Parody.
Exactly. Think about drag, for instance. It can highlight how much work goes into producing a seemingly natural gender expression. It exposes the constructedness.
By playing with the codes, you show they are codes, not natural facts.
Precisely. It denaturalizes gender, potentially destabilizing those fixed categories.
So people who embody gender in ways that don't fit the neat boxes, the incoherent identities, they actually reveal the limits of the rules.
That's the idea. Their existence challenges the framework and shows that the supposed unity and stability of gender are effects of regulation, not inherent truths. These disruptions can challenge the regulations themselves.
Okay, this has been a lot. Let's try and boil it down for listeners. Key takeaways from this deep dive into becoming a woman.
Okay, first, becoming a woman is way more complex than just learning roles. It's an ongoing performance within power structures.
Got it. Performance, not just learning.
Second, the category woman itself. It's not stable, not unified. It's shaped by politics, language, history, and intersects with race, class, etc.
Right. No single woman experience.
Third, that sex-gender line is blurry. Even sex might be culturally constructed, intertwined with gender from the start.
Okay. Sex isn't a simple biological given.
Fourth, compulsory heterosexuality plays a huge role in keeping the binary gender system locked in place.
It demands coherence.
And finally, because gender is performative, there's potential for change, for subversion, through disrupting those performances.
Through doing gender differently. Okay, so here's a final thought to chew on. If our whole understanding of woman, and maybe gender generally, is this constructed, contested thing. What does that actually mean for how we think about our own identities, about politics, about what a more, I don't know, fluid or inclusive future might even look like?
It's a big question. How do these ideas challenge our own ingrained assumptions about who we are and how the world works?
Definitely something to ponder.
And look, we've really just skimmed the surface here. These are incredibly rich, complex thinkers.
For sure.
So if any of this sparked your interest, we definitely encourage you to check out the original works. Butler, Beauvoir, Foucault, Wittig, Irigaray.
Yeah, reading them directly can really offer some powerful ways to analyze, well, everything around us, social issues, personal stuff. It's potent.